Hello and welcome to Afternoon Equaltea. My name is Christy and this is our first episode, so I'm so excited that you're here and joining me for my conversation with Sydney Weiss today. She is the creator and host of Seek the Joy podcast, and she is just a really smart, kind, beautiful lady, and I'm so excited to talk with her. So let's get started. All right, so let's get started.
Okay.
I just want to say again, like you really have been a really big inspiration for me for a very long time. Ever since we met at that networking event, and so I followed you right away,
Mhm.
and I love the podcast and I love the storytelling series and all the little like branches you kind of made from it.
Mm.
But so congratulations on 3 years.
Thank
And
you. What you just said is so nice too, because I remember when we met and it was like this random event. I think it was put on by 6 Degrees Society, right?
yeah,
And you and me and then one other woman, we connected right away. And um, it's been so much fun following you on social media and everything you're doing kind of in between. So thank you for saying that. That's so sweet. And yes, I just celebrated 3 years of the podcast and everything in between. So It's been it's been fun, to say
yay.
the least.
So you're going into 4 years. I was just curious, what got you started in the podcast space, and what was that? What were you trying to like put out there, and how did it come to what you have now?
Yeah. So, we've gotta, like, go back in time to about 2016 for this story. I had just so in May of 2016, I graduated from law school, and, about a month or so before I graduated, I had some health stuff come up that was serious for me. I had shingles at 25,
Oh wow.
and, so I graduated from law school, sat for the California bar exam. A month or so later, had my appendix removed, and then it kind of these health things kept coming up for me. And so by the time bar exam results came out in November of 2016, and I found out I didn't pass the bar by a really small margin, I was devastated, to say the
Yeah.
least, because I had really placed all of my value on external things, on success, like who I was as a person, how I thought of myself in the world, on all these external things. So when you do that, and you don't pass an exam that is a defining moment in your mind,
Yeah.
everything kind of just crumbles. And I sort of went through, without realizing it at the time, like this 9 month metamorphosis journey, where I sat for the bar again. I studied, but in that time, I changed the way I was speaking to myself. I shifted the type of media I was consuming. I was listening to more podcasts. It was more about mindset and being more intentional. And this term of self love and self care kind of came into my life a little bit more. So by the time I sat for the bar again in July 2017, I came out of that experience feeling like a totally different person and really wanted to find a way to connect with other people who either had similar stories or experiences or just really wanted to sit in a moment of vulnerability together. And I didn't have any like podcasting experience. I had never done something like that before. My
Right.
background was strictly, in law school and academia. And before that, in undergrad, was focused on psychology and the law. And I dove in, and within 2 weeks, I had the name of the show, the idea, and I launched it. And the other day, actually, I was listening to the intro episode for the first time in a couple of years. And the way in which I have grown as a person, the way in which the show has grown in that time has been really profound for me, just having that moment of reflection. And so that's really where the show started. I really wanted to connect with people.
Mhm.
I wanted to focus on this element of joy because I think so many of us, and I'm curious for you too, if this has been your experience in 2020, we all want that joy. We want to feel good. We want to feel happy. We
Yeah.
want to feel lit up from the inside out. We want to be pursuing what it is that's our passion. But often we don't know how to get there. And then if we get there, how do we hold on to it? And so I really wanted to have conversations with people focused on that. And the actual name of the podcast, Seek the Joy, is inspired by a conversation I had with a friend back in 2015. He's a friend and a mentor, and he said to me at the time, Sydney, you need to seek the joy in your life. You need more joy. I'm a very literal person sometimes. So I went out and I made a bracelet. It was like a simple engraved bracelet and it said seek the joy on it. And I would wear it all the time.
Oh, wow.
And when I was trying to come up with the name of the show, I saw the bracelet like out of the corner of my eye on my dresser. And I thought, that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be Seek the Joy
Yeah.
podcast. And so that's really where it started. And I will say, that theme of joy and connection coming together in community has really followed me now 3-ish years later, and
Mhm.
it's been a fun journey. I really have changed and gained so much from it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, what a great experience, and I mean, just to be able to consistently have that outlet, and to be able to find, that those stories and those people to talk to, I think is overwhelmingly fulfilling. Uh,
Yeah, I muted myself because I don't know if you can hear this outside. Do you hear the sirens? It's so
oh,
crazy. It's like it sounds like I don't know, it's crazy. Yes, I totally agree with you what you're saying, and I think there's no shortage of people to talk to about joy and about passion and about um your career or your journey. It's interesting. A lot of my conversations throughout the last 3 years have been it starts off being focused on someone's career journey because we're
mhm,
talking about their business or their book that they wrote or a nonprofit that they've started or an idea that they launched on the internet, whatever it
yeah,
might be.
yeah, yeah,
But beyond that sense of talking first about career, we pull back the layers, I think, quite a bit in our conversation. And it becomes more about you as a person and what drives you and what excites you and what you've encountered along the way. I think we forget that joy is not just something that like exists on its own.
yeah,
With joy is also struggle and adversity and these roadblocks that come up in our lives and figuring out for ourselves how we're going to navigate that journey, how we're going to navigate that experience. And I have learned so much from every single conversation, every connection. Um, and my hope has always been that what I learn comes out through the interview as well, because I'm learning about the person while we're talking. And
right,
I don't always, sometimes I have questions prepared, sometimes I don't, it just depends. And it's been really cool too to see what people learn like from the conversations as well. Sometimes it's the same thing I'm learning, other times it's a totally different light bulb moment.
yeah,
But I think it just goes to show we all take something very individual from media,
great.
from what we consume, from what we tune into.
So, quick follow-up question: how do you define joy? Like, is it a feeling? Is it a state of mind? Is it like how do you like what is this thing called joy that you're seeking?
Yeah. I love this question because I think the first thing I'll say in terms of defining joy for yourself, it's going to be individual to you. It's not like something someone else can prescribe. It's never going to be one size fits all. For me, the way I look at joy, joy is the thing, the place, the feeling, the experience that makes you feel most like yourself, that makes you feel good and comfortable and like you're lit up from the inside out. If you're doing something that used to bring you joy, now it's just making you feel like crap. Okay,
Mhm.
that's maybe not the thing anymore that brings you joy. And I have found that in part with defining joy is really about tuning into the way it makes you feel. Because if it makes you feel good, you can go out and seek out those things and you can seek out that feeling for yourself again. If it makes you feel bad, you find something else that makes you feel bad, this ain't it. This is not the joy.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's very different than happiness. Happiness is like something that you experience in the moment. It's more of an external thing, whereas joy is that internal experience. It's that feeling. And I think joy can be something that sustains us too.
Mhm.
I will say, like in 2020, what's been obviously this has been a challenging year for all of us, but if I didn't have the podcast and the different arms that have grown out of it,
Yeah.
I think it would have been a much harder year for me.
Mhm.
Um, I just think about the way I've spent my time this year, the different conversations and connections I've been able to not only make, but hold on to and further develop. And the ability to dive into something creative that makes me feel good and excites me and is just such a good distraction, by the way, from what's
Yeah.
going on in the world. I think it would have been a much harder year for me. So finding what your joy is and then figuring out ways to bring it into your life has just been a running theme on
Mhm.
the podcast, but then totally a running theme in my life too. So it's totally individual to you, I think is my main point.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you so much. So speaking of 2020, the other reason I was really excited to talk to you today was we had spoken earlier about content shifting, and especially with like 2020, the things that happened. You kind of did like do a little shifting in what in the stories you brought to to the table. So what did you do a review? Like how like what was that process like for you?
Yeah. Well, oh my God, I think you and I sat down originally like over a month ago and we
Yeah.
had like a really good conversation about this. And I think I remember telling you, I remember it was back in probably April or May. And I think that was not the height, but really at the beginning of Black Lives Matter being more of a conversation in 2020. And
Hmm.
I definitely did an audit of all of my content. I went through every podcast episode I did. I looked at every interview on my blog series called Joy Corner. I looked at, my social media, I looked at everything. And while I was really proud of the show and proud of the conversations we've had and the level of diversity and inclusivity and not only just like the various topics we've had on the show, but also the people and their experiences and what they bring to the table. And while I was really proud of the show and proud of what I've done, there was still room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. We're never going to hit the mark perfectly. But I think it does start with that level of awareness and wanting to make a shift. And part of for me of doing that audit and wanting to make a shift was also this huge realization I had, which was that while I feel and I know that you can have joy at the same time as like adversity and struggle and
Hmm.
pain, you can have joy and celebration and also be really in like having a difficult time and overcoming something. I don't know how often a wellness or spiritual spaces online really share that level of conversation or duality. The
Hmm.
truth is we have to have that duality. That's life. Like you don't experience the same emotion in an hour. Like this morning I was both happy that it's Friday and frustrated with my work. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes, no,
you're
totally.
human, you experience different emotions and experiences at the same time. But what I feel is missing sometimes from those conversations in those spaces is a recognition of that duality. And so I really wanted to make a point moving forward for every aspect of the show, everything I share, to yes, talk about the joy and the passion and the inspiration and this walk towards doing what we love in life and having it fill us up, but not ignore the reality of what's going on in the world, not ignore Black Lives Matter, not ignore climate change, not ignore the presidential election, not ignore the pandemic. I mean, there were podcasts that I was listening to that didn't even talk about the pandemic. Like they never brought it up.
How
And
do
I
you like?
how do you do that? How do you do that? And I think there's a fear about being polarizing, to be really honest. I think there's a fear in any sort of media space about what if I say something that's going to alienate an audience? What
Right.
if I share about a topic that's important to me, but it polarizes somebody?
Mhm.
And that's kind of like the audit I was doing and these thoughts that I was having. And so I really made sure, I think it must have been like from the summer beyond that, yes, we had really good, positive, fun conversations on the show. But within that, we don't ignore what's happening. So, I had a really beautiful conversation with a woman. Her name is Akia Red about mental health on
Mhm.
the podcast. But we also tied in this conversation that she had with her son, or she's had with her son over the years, about being a Black man in America and what that means and what that looks like. And I was so grateful that we went in that direction in that recording, because that was not something I had talked about on the show. And
Right.
quite frankly, as a white woman, I've never had that conversation. As a white Jewish woman, I've had conversations about anti Semitism, but never about what this color of my skin, the impact that has being out in the world when it comes to, racism
Mhm.
and interactions with police. And so for me, it was just important to have that level of duality on the podcast. And I will say, I mean, if people haven't liked it, they haven't said anything. But the people who have noticed and have felt a resonance with it have definitely reached out and have commented on the value of those conversations.
That's
And,
great.
I feel like instead of fearing being polarizing or losing your audience, it's more important to stay true, I think, to yourself
Mhm.
and stay true to your own level of authenticity. Because even though authenticity is totally a buzzword, authentic to me means showing up in a way that I know is truthful for me, is honest, and is in my own integrity. Because I think when you're in media, when you're in a storytelling space, when you're sharing other people's stories, that level of integrity and sharing the truth, whether it's your truth or somebody else's, I think is such a huge part of it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely did that audit at the kind of towards the beginning of summer, a little bit before. And I
Mhm.
think it was really impactful and important for me to do.
That's great. So, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, because like I had as a follow up question was like when you did start sort of shifting your
Mhm.
content and start presenting that, like what was did you get any feedback? Like what was the? I mean, you said people were pretty receptive to it, which is great. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, the feedback I received has been positive. I think I actually did receive a couple of DMs that were not so nice and commenting on, the usual stuff. Like if you post something, like I remember I was posting about Breonna Taylor and I was
Mhm.
posting about Black Lives Matter, and I continue to do that today. And I had someone in my DMs be like, "You're not even Black," or "Why do you care?" Or, so there are always going to be people like that who have a lot to say that's super misinformed, and I don't really know where it comes from other than clearly a place of hate and discomfort within themselves. But I
Mhm.
just quietly and politely said to myself, "Thank you so much for your feedback," and delete. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to engage. Do you know what I mean? Um, but if anyone hasn't felt good about the direction of the show, or I haven't heard it, maybe they've unsubscribed, maybe they've unfollowed. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's
But that's okay. You're not going to be for everybody, right? Your
right.
show, your content is not going to be for everybody. And I think that's important to remember too. You're always going to find your audience. You're
Mhm.
always going to find your niche, um, especially when you're staying true to yourself and
Mhm.
what's important to you. Those people will find you, and you'll find them. But it's part of the journey. It's part of the media journey for sure.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that like you got a comment about like you're not even Black. Like, why are you sharing these stories? Because like I'm actually one of my future episodes. I'm talking to a woman who she started. She's basically starting like a community, like a femme community.
Mm,
But she's Filipina and she's cisgendered, she's straight, like all that, but like the thing, like the cause that she sort of like has been wanting to uplift, and like and most of the support that she has been like, or like the charity she works with, the people that she reaches out to sort of like raise with her platform are
yeah.
Black trans women. And she gets asked all the time, like, well, are you trans? Like, you're clearly not Black. But then, like, so we're actually going to have a conversation about compassion and like,
Mhm.
and just being like a compassionate ally,
Yeah.
and how like, and how it's, and why it's important to be like a compassionate ally, even if you aren't like, you don't have like a firsthand, like, like you can support Black trans women without having to be a Black trans woman.
Yeah, I love okay, I'm so excited to listen to that conversation because I think that is so important, being a compassionate ally. And
Hmm.
I think that word compassion is key here.
Hmm.
When you come from that space of empathy, kindness, and compassion, and you see the humanity in somebody else, which I think is a lot of what I've been trying to share throughout the last 3 years. But I
Hmm.
think especially this year, we're connected by a deeper sense of humanity because the pandemic, I think if it's shown us anything, is that we are all experiencing a sense of universal grief
Right.
in different ways, which is reminding us of our humanity and bringing us together. But when you're able to do that and you come from that space of compassion, you can open up your space within yourself and then within what you've created too, to give others an opportunity to share who they are, share their story, support them along the way in
Hmm.
a way that is meaningful and relevant, I think is important too. I had a conversation. God, I had so many interesting conversations this year, but I had a conversation with this woman. Her name is Christian Brandt, and she's a co-founder of She's the First. It's a nonprofit which really champions girls' education in the world. And
Hmm.
she and her co-founder came out with this book called Impact, and we were talking about this sense of compassion in impact. And I remember she said in our conversation, part of being an ally is knowing when it's important to be a listener and when it's important to be more on the front lines,
Hmm.
orchestrating change by building something or promoting something.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to be a listener.
Right.
And I found that to be really interesting this year too, especially as I continue to have conversations and share them. That impact of being a listener, it goes back to what you said. being a compassionate ally. I'm really excited to listen to your
Yeah,
conversation.
no, I'm so excited. It'll definitely be happening like
Yeah.
later in the new year, but
Okay.
it'll be
Okay.
like
I'm going to look out for it.
well, I'm probably planning in like mid-January having that conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that'll be so cool. That'll be so
Yeah.
good.
And
Yeah.
so, but
Mm.
anyways, I wanted to ask you if you have any advice or tips or whatever for people who are like, especially going into this new year, because I look at this new year coming as like, one of great opportunity and like change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know if you have any advice or tips for people like me, who are getting into this.
Yeah. Well, I think you're off to an amazing start. And I think what's important to remember when you're either sharing stories, engaging in stories, providing a platform for stories is exactly what you said about the humanity aspect. You're not going to always agree with someone, right? You're not always going to have the same beliefs. You're not always going to understand what somebody else is saying. But the point of the conversation is for that dialogue, it is to have an exchange of ideas. And if you can continue to come from that space of compassion and empathy and kindness, it's going to follow you. But Chrissy, you already lead with that. You'll be fine. I'm so impressed with what you've created and I'm so honored to be part of it. But I would say in general, for anyone who wants to start a podcast or a web series or anything where they're putting not only themselves out there, but a story or an interview, just I think put yourself in the shoes of the listener. Put yourself in the shoes of your audience. What will they want to learn? What will they want to know? What can they take from what you're sharing? I think for me, the goal always is to present something of value. I don't want to just publish something to publish it. I don't want to just record something for the sake of recording it. And so, especially in this last year, in the third year of the show, and now I'm in the fourth year, which is weird, by the way. Like, it's so weird, but I feel like I've been a little bit more discerning with the guests and with the content. And um, it's such a weird word to use, but I really look at and vet all of the pitches or the people I'm going to reach out to in general or what I receive to make sure that, even if we don't agree on something, it'll be a conversation and an interaction and a moment in time that's of value to somebody. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think if you can put yourself in that framework and that space within yourself, I think it's really, really valuable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think, it's one of those things too where you just don't know until you get started,
Yeah.
right? Like
You
I'm
gotta dive
sure,
right in and like,
right? Like when you were thinking about this web series and putting it all together, I'm sure you had like different thoughts about what it would be like and what it wouldn't be like. But the truth is you've got no clue until you actually get your feet wet and you
yeah.
start going. And I think you learn so much through trial and error. And you're going to make more mistakes and you're going to have more losses than you are wins because that's the nature of starting anything new. But knowing that and knowing that you'll build on what you've created, I think that's what helps to make it sustainable for you too. And make sure it's fun. Like if you're doing this and 6 months down the road, you're like, this is not fun anymore. It is just purely stress. Then reevaluate. You can always reevaluate, check in with yourself and pivot. I have pivoted so much
Mm-hmm.
in 3 years. The show does not look like anything it looked like at the beginning. I mean, I told you I listened to audio from the very beginning. I've also looked at the social media from the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and it is wildly different. So just know you'll cut. And I say that without criticizing myself, but also thinking like, wow, we've really grown over here. You'll just build and you'll learn, and it's an invaluable experience, and it translates to so much in
Mm-hmm.
your life.
That's awesome. So this is just a quick follow-up. So what does Seek the Joy look like in 2021?
Oh, such a good question. I have been in deep deep planning mode this month of December. I am really excited because a couple of things, and you're the first person I'm telling, by the way, so you're the first to know. There's a couple of things happening next year that I'm really excited about. The first is I'm launching a YouTube channel for the show.
Amazing.
I
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm in the process of uploading all previous audio, but then moving forward, a lot of the conversations will be just like this,
Mm-hmm.
over Zoom, where someone could watch the show as opposed to only listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited about, a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie, because I've been behind the microphone but not necessarily visible during these conversations. So people are really gonna see, like, I take notes when someone is, am I talking to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, really, I watched one back the other day and I was like, wow, you're really like listening hard to what this person is saying. So people are
I think that's great for people to see though, because it's like I think watching someone actually like intentionally listen is so valuable, because I
yeah.
feel like this is gonna sound really, really kind of silly, but I feel like a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yes. Yes.
So I
Yes.
think that's gonna be great. I'm really excited to see that. Oh my goodness.
Oh, thank you. Well, okay. Well, I'll share it with you when it's live, and would love any of your feedback or anybody's feedback as I get started. So that's like the first thing that's coming next year. Um, with something else that I'm doing that I'm really excited about, more so in that sort of video realm with the show. We're going to be doing more Instagram lives, which I wasn't really doing before.
Yeah.
And a lot of the content on the show every month will not necessarily be focused around a specific theme, but at least for the first quarter of the year, I'd love to focus on being more mindful, and being more mindful both with ourselves and with others. And so that's kind of where the show is going to kick off
Hmm.
in 2021. And I'm also trying just to leave enough room for things to be organic in the moment. So something I really wanted to shift this year. I'm a planner, as you can tell, and sometimes things are planned 3 months in advance, which is great until something crazy happens, like a pandemic, and then you feel like I've got to shift my content.
Yeah.
So a big lesson I'm taking from this past year is plan, but leave enough space so you could have a timely conversation with somebody, and then you could air it in that timely spot,
Hmm.
as opposed to like, oh my God, how am I going to shuffle everything around? Because I
Yeah.
planned so far in advance.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming for me too, is just leaving some space for some timely conversations, um, and making sure I'm sticking, with that duality of, here's what's really happening in the world, but this is also how we're going to find our joy and maintain and sustain our joy through it. So that's what's coming. The biggest thing is the YouTube channel, which sounds like so lame for it to be a big thing, but it's a big thing for me because
No,
I've been
girl,
only
I
behind
totally.
the mic, and now everyone gets to see me. So it'll be fun. It'll be so different,
I
but
think
it'll
you're
be fun.
gorgeous, you're beautiful, you're smart, and again, I think it'll be really valuable for people to see, like, intentional listening, and how like and what that looks like, and how, and to see it sort of like in practice.
I think so too. And I love what you said about listening, because like I shared this year, I've learned the importance. Well, I haven't learned it. I think it's been solidified. The
Mhm.
importance of being a good listener has really been solidified,
Yeah.
and not being so quick to assume you know everything, or
Yeah.
so quick to assume that you have the right answer. I do not have the right answer
Mhm.
for anything outside of my personal life. Someone else can only speak to themselves too, but I think it's about how we come together with those shared experiences, those shared and varied perspectives, and how we put it together. It's like a really complex jigsaw puzzle, right? But it's about how we bring those individual and unique thoughts, experiences, perspectives, worldview together to really make solutions and ways to come together that's going to benefit everybody. So yeah, big takeaway: be a listener, and don't assume you know everything, because you don't.
Well, and that was the goal with this, because like I know I don't know everything, and so
Yeah, me too.
I'm hoping to speak to people with like experiences who can not necessarily teach me, but who can at least like, who are willing to share that with me, so that I can at least be more kind of attuned to what those like what these conversations are, what they mean. And so it's not like, I'm not, because otherwise I feel like I'm just kind of talking at people a lot of times, and it's like, no, like, and it has nothing to do with like qualifications. It's like, this is how we learn. We have to like sit down and listen to each other.
Yeah, it's a really important, I have found through the conversations I've had and the conversations I listen to, because in addition to my show, I listen to a lot of podcasts every week.
Mhm.
Especially now that I'm working from home, and I just play them in the background, as
Yeah.
I'm working. And I have found that the best conversations and the best interactions are one where the host, if there is one, um, it's clear that they are genuinely interested in learning about the topic, learning about the person, and don't come to the table with a pre-existing agenda of what they think they know. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can continue to be curious and come from that space of curiosity, it leads to greater humanity. So you'll see this too, I think, as you continue your conversations on this show and this series. And in 6 months, you and I should debrief. Like, I just want to hear how it's going, because we'll stay in touch anyway, but we should debrief, because I think it'll be interesting to see, you know, you go into something with an intention and an expectation, maybe. Like, how could we not have expectations for how something will go? And then you get into it, and then 6 months down the road, you realize this actually has evolved into something else, and
Yeah.
it's so different from what you anticipated. But you'll learn, and then we'll all learn with you, which I think is just really cool.
Oh, I'm so excited. Well, with that, thank you so much for being on. And yeah, like good luck to you in the new year. We'll
Thank
definitely,
you.
like, I'm going to hold you to that 6 month debrief. I'm very excited to do that because I
Hell
definitely,
yeah.
I think that'll be so interesting to have this and then get there and be like, oh my gosh.
I
Like,
think so too. I think so too. And I can't thank you enough for having me. When you first reached out about this web series that you're putting together, I thought, A, so timely, but B, you have such, I think, the perfect um, temperament. I don't know if that's the right word, but it feels like it. Like, this is so perfect for you. And I'm really honored to have been part of it. And thank you for inviting me. And heck yeah, we're going to do that 6 month debrief.
yeah,
Hold me to it. Let's put it on the calendar now,
yeah,
because I think, there's so much, we don't even know what the world's going to look like in
I
May or
know. Like, there's
June
so much,
of
like, it's
20.
already
It's going
so
to be
much.
crazy. But I will say, I think what you said at the top of the conversation of, 2021 is a big year of opportunity, and it's a big chance to gather the lessons and the gifts of 2020 with us. And so I hope anybody's that's watching or tuning in, think about what 2020 brought you, whether it's hardship or joy or both, and
Mhm.
how you can build on it to create or continue to create what it is you're doing in 2021. So um, just thank you so much again. This was fun. I loved chatting with you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna let you go, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much to Sydney for coming and talking with me today. If you want to know more about her or her projects, you can find her at Seek the Joy on Instagram, and also tune in and subscribe to her podcast, Seek the Joy, on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are found. Also, don't forget to look for and subscribe to her YouTube channel. And while you're there, also search Afternoon Equalety and click subscribe to that one as well for first updates on that. Thank you all for joining me on my first episode. We got through it, and I'm so excited to go on this journey with you guys. So tune in next week. We're going to be dropping episodes every Friday at 3 p.m., and I can't wait to sip with you guys here on Afternoon Equality.